And Bill, though, so to your point, I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just talking about the incrementalism that presidents, you can talk about FDR, they all will slowly move that direction to get ahead of the American people. But to your point, though, let me finish. Yeah. To your point, the president has been criticized time and time again for not being the explainer-in-chief, not being the leader-in-chief, leading from behind. Perhaps that's one reason why the polls reflect that Americans don't want to get involved. They haven't been told about the gravity of the situation. Listen, you and I have been fighting for a long time about foreign policy. I'm on Colin Powell's side. Less is more. But in this case, we can't hide from this poison gas.
Well, in the real world, war is sometimes war, and I do think it's a foreign policy matter, and Colin Powell would agree with this. If you're going to get in big and get in decisively now. If you go in incrementally in this way, you don't have the effect you want to have on ISIS. You don't have the effect you want to have on bolstering your allies. You don't have the effect you want to have in the region.
Do you really think that we are not in there in nearly full force? As far as we can go with full force right now. Do you really think we have no Spartans on the ground right now? Do you really think the President of the United States should have gone on TV last night and say, here's what we're going to do? Now, ISIS, start taking notes, because here's what we're going to do. Of course we're in there.
We're not in there in any serious way. We have 300 advisors there. We've used no air power to speak of. If we're in there seriously...
How do you know that?
I think we know enough about our U.S. government that the Air Force assets aren't going to be deployed without us knowing.
I would be willing.
Well, you think we're using air power and ISIS is just marching up north unimpeded? I mean, I think we're capable of stopping ISIS if we are serious.
But you have to have spotters on the ground. If you want to take fast-moving vehicles out on the ground, you have to have laser spotters.
I couldn't agree more. I sat here and John and I had a discussion of this.
Hold on one second. I've got to be the interpreter. He's from South Boston. I thought he said Spartans 3 times. He's saying spotters. So you're saying they have to have spotters on.
Yeah,
and I kept saying Spartans.
Why are we talking about Spartans?
Why do we want Spartacus?
Are the Greeks going in? I don't know. You know, the Spartans were great.
So that's what the Southie would say.
The Spartans were great. The Spartans were great fighters. The Spartans.
Go ahead.
The Spartans were great fighters, and we should bring some of them in if we can revive them.
If we get them on the ground.
John and I had this discussion, I think, 2 months ago, and I said, look, you've got to be willing to send in some ground troops precisely for this reason. And John correctly said, well, the president doesn't want to, and the American public isn't for it. So he sent in just a couple of hundred advisors. But I agree. But if you're going to do that, don't you agree you should tell the American public you're doing it in a serious way?
No, because you tell the American public last night on TV, you're telling ISIS. You know,
well, fine. I agree with that.
Let's knock a few of them off before we.
Okay.
We have agreement.
Well, we have agreement. If he is covertly doing all kinds of amazing things that we don't know about, his national security advisor said a month ago. Yeah. Susan Rice sent a letter to Congress saying, "Hey, you know what? That authorization for war in Iraq, let it expire. We're not going to ever fight in Iraq." I mean, if Congress had followed her advice, would the president even have the constitutional authority to intervene? He's intervening, I take it, under the 2002 authorization for the use of force in Iraq.
Congress, let's go from